My name is Obed Figueroa. I am the host of Lessons Learned, and we are very privileged today to present to you another practicing physician. So I'd love to begin the introduction. Um, Major Jelaun Newsome is an osteopathic physician. He obtained his undergraduate degree from Norfolk State University and HBCU at Norfolk, Virginia. While there, he majored in biology, focusing on a pre-professional track. Upon graduating, he enrolled in a research-based post-baccalaureate program at Albany Medical College in Albany, New York, where he assisted in HIV and cellular wound healing research. He then went on to attend medical school at Touro College of Osteopathic Medicine in New York and completed a residency in family medicine at Walmart Army Medical Center at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Then assigned to an Army health clinic in Germany, where he progressed from attending physician, chief of preventative medicine, to medical director. Most recently, he was assigned to work as a unit physician for the 3rd Battalion's 7th Special Forces Group with the United States Army in Florida, where he has been for the past 2.5 years. He is also married to Dr. Michelle Newsome, and they have 2 children. So as a disclaimer, views expressed in this interview are those of the host and honored guest and do not reflect the official policy or position of the Department of the Army, Department of Defense, or the United States government. So if you can give me your first reaction, and then we'll move forward and do the deep dive, okay? So PC or Mac?
Mac.
Android or iPhone?
iPhone.
Your favorite vacation spot?
A beach somewhere.
You might have to pull up some.
Oh, sorry. A beach somewhere.
Your favorite restaurant?
I'd have to say Ruth Chris.
Okay. Favorite TV show?
Family Guy.
Favorite movie?
Gladiator.
Oh, I'm with you with that. Favorite sport?
Soccer.
Okay. Favorite music genre?
Pop.
Favorite song?
I don't really have one.
No? Okay. Favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite drink? Alcohol if you drink.
Crown.
Okay. Favorite book?
The Three Musketeers.
Favorite car?
The one that's paid off.
So now focusing on school a little bit, your favorite high school teacher?
I'm sorry?
Favorite high school teacher?
Favorite high school teacher? Definitely my high school science teacher, Mrs. Garrison.
Mrs. Garrison. Okay. Favorite subject in college, and it may coincide with the favorite teacher in college, undergrad.
That would be botany. Corresponding with my favorite professor.
And who was the teacher?
Dr. Podu.
Dr. Podu. Okay. All right, cool. Well, thanks for sharing that. And then one last thing, is there a favorite food or snack that you just, when you indulge, you feel guilty of afterwards?
Every year I make sweet potato pie for Christmas and Thanksgiving. And it's so good. And I always feel bad about it. That's why I only make it twice a year.
Awesome. All right, well, thank you so much. I'd like to do this chronologically. So like when you were young, let's go back as far as high school. Were you thinking about medicine at that point? The science?
So high school is when I actually kind of transitioned to kind of full on deciding that I wanted to do medicine. I originally was thinking about becoming like a Air Force pilot, like a jet pilot. And in my high school sciences is when I really became interested in like the human body, and just learning the intricacies of um, various things that affect the body, what the body can do, things like that. So it was actually high school that I kind of switched over from thinking about more of it from a technical field to more of a like a science based field.
And would you say was it influenced at that point in your life by a teacher or by family members, by mentor? Like how did that happen?
So at that point, it was more of a just kind of learning about the different options that are out there.
Hmm.
So both my parents were in the military. My mother and my father, both in the Army, and so I was around a lot of Army stuff and military things. And so I think that kind of early on influenced me to wanting to become kind of go in the military.
Gotcha.
But then as I learned more about opportunities that are out there, learned more about the different sciences and things like that, I kind of more into the medicine aspect of it. I got to do things like science Olympiad and stuff like that in high school, in middle school and high school, and learning about the options. I think that's a big thing, is being exposed to different options, because if you don't know what's out there, you don't know what you can pursue.
Yeah, you're 100% correct on that in terms of exposure. So was it your schooling that was giving you that exposure, or was it your parents? Like, because we're talking high school, so who was
Mhm.
the initiator of getting you out there? How was that happening?
So I think it was the school I went to. I was able to just be exposed to like the different like sciences and science Olympiad and various other clubs I was in, and then field trips and things like that. I think it was definitely that. My mom was a dentist. And so I was exposed to science in that aspect, but I had no desire to become a dentist.
Mhm.
Um, but I believe the physician route, I first learned about that in school.
Got you, got you. Um, so at the high school level, were there any subjects that were challenging at that time?
In high school, not necessarily. I've never been awesome at math. And so pre-calculus was challenging,
Mhm.
but I was able to kind of escape high school with A's and B's.
Mhm.
When I got to college, that definitely the maths and chemistries were definitely more challenging to me um, than other subjects.
Now, this assumption that I have, and I guess I'll ask it so you can clarify. With they call it Army brat or just Army child of an Army, or, Army. Um, there is an assumption that you move around a lot, that you're going from country to country to country. How stable was it for you?
Well, for me, it all depends on your branch, honestly, that you are a military brat of.
Mm.
Air Force is a little bit more stable in long term, while Army, we moved around pretty much every 3 to 4 years. So I've never lived in one place in my entire life for more than 4 years, and that was for college, honestly.
Okay. Alrighty. So now you are moving towards your undergrad and you're thinking about going into the sciences. Tell me about that process.
I had a very strong support structure, and in education was very um, pushed and strongly held value in my family growing up. It was kind of like in how I plan on raising my kids, it's kind of like it's an expectation that I went to college.
Mhm.
It's not a matter of if I was going to college, but when I was going to college, and not a matter of the main thing was, okay, which college where are you going to? It's not like, are you going? It's which college are you going to? And education in that aspect, and just that expectation growing up was a very strong factor in everything. kind of deciding when I got to college what major to go into. Um, I I went more of the traditional route of the, hey, I'm going to do a science major with, and then, fill in the gaps wherever. But, kind of I knew my route, wanted to go to medical school. And looking back on it, it's like, would I have done that again? I probably would have. Back then I thought it was absolutely necessary. Like, okay, that's the only way you get to medicine, because I didn't know too much about the different routes and things like that. I thought that was the only way to get into medicine.
Mhm.
And so, but like looking back on it now, knowing what I know, you don't have to go into a biology or a chemistry or something like that in order to get into medicine.
Mhm.
There are prerequisites, right, and get into medical school, but it's not necessary to do only biology. And
Yeah.
I didn't know that back then. I still would, looking back, I probably still would have done the same thing, just because I liked biology. But knowing those different options is definitely important for people who are coming up behind me.
Now you chose an HBCU, and I'd like to understand, um, why that was important to you, and how was that experience as opposed, in your opinion, to other experiences that you could have had. Could you share that?
Yeah, no problem. And so I went to an HBCU for a couple of different reasons. One, monetary reason. I got a scholarship to there. And so that helped out, definitely helped out. But two, I wanted a different experience. So I went to a, um, um, a majority like high school. And so I got that experience. But I knew I was going out into the world. I knew I was going to be experiencing a lot of different cultures, things like that. And I wanted to definitely make sure I understood and experienced the whole gamut of society. And so going to an HBCU, definitely with the smallness of it, the small class sizes, the culture, the different cultural aspects of it was very important to me.
And you were part of a frat attorney, right?
Correct. Member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated.
Okay. All right. Cool. Cool. So now you're in undergrad, and I'm curious, you know, what was the challenges for you in that experience, and how did you, get past them?
Yeah, so academically, biochemistry and physics, those are the main challenges. Being honest with everybody is that, my first semester of biochemistry, I got a D. I did not pass. um,
Listen, Dr.
yeah,
King did the same thing.
yeah, yeah. So like, I did not pass. I got a D. But then I retook it and I got to end up getting a B in it.
Hmm.
There's various things that affected that. And then when I'm going into medical school, that question comes up. They look at your transcripts, every single score on your transcript.
But if I could pause you there, so
Yeah.
this could be really powerful to those listening. When what was happening when you experienced those challenges academically, like what was going on? If you are okay to disclose, was it academically or was it outside of academia that influenced you struggling in that way? Were you
Mhm.
prepared, or was there other externals happening? What happened?
So it was a combination of internal and external factors, but mainly, honestly, internal. And so one aspect is that I was in the college life and I was not focusing as much as I could have.
Okay.
um,
Yeah.
and so that's probably the main thing that was going on with me, is that I was not focusing as much as I should have been. I kind of grew up blessed in that uh, high school wasn't very hard for me. I was very easily able to memorize and just kind of like, hey, look at something, memorize it, and keep it moving.
Mhm.
While once you hit college, it's more of a sensitization and analyzing, synthesizing. It's not just rote memorization anymore.
Mhm.
It's putting a lot of things together. And I didn't make the jump. like I should have.
Gotcha.
I didn't progress. I didn't make that next step in maturity as I should have. And I really think that was a wake up call for me um, at that point, because before then it's just like, yep, I stay up late. I enjoy college. And then, I study the minimal I needed to study in order to do well, and study like I studied in high school. And I was like, okay, hey, I'm gonna get A's and B's like I did in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And it definitely did not work out that way.
Hmm.
And it was really a wake up call to me that I needed to focus if I wanted to pursue my dream.
So you got this sense, you had to gather this sense of maturity or gain a sense of maturity. But then there's also like, where did you acquire the skills to make that shift? Like, how did that happen?
Um, so that kind of maturing, those skills come with one, experience, and two, having mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And mentors is different from coaching, which is different from leading. By having somebody that's invested in you, has been where you're trying to go, and is willing to guide you in that aspect. So probably about my sophomore year is when I started hanging out with people that were older and wiser than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that is definitely a key to my success,
Mm-hmm.
in that instead of hanging out with guys and drinking on this weekend, right, I would hang out with people who were already accomplished. They were graduating and they were getting ready to go to their first job. Their mindset is completely different than the people who were my age, right? Just turned 21 and in college. And so learning and hanging out and seeing where other people were, and just sitting at the feet of giants, if you might want to say,
Mm-hmm.
and just learning about what they're doing now and what they did to get there, learning from their mistakes, I think was very, very valuable. And learning that, hey, if I don't get my act together, I'll never get to where they are today,
Mm-hmm.
right? And learning how important it was to, okay, I might not think that biochemistry is important, but then talking to physicians, like, you got to take biochemistry again when you get to med school, right? I was like, oh, things like that, and learning like, okay, yeah, you have to take it again, but how this affects this body system. And if you don't know this, this is how this is going to affect that person. Oh, I didn't even think about that. I just thought about how I hated biochemistry. And so,
Yeah.
so definitely that mentoring aspect, and getting and learning from people who are ahead of you, um, sitting at their feet, learning from them, learning from their mistakes, learning from their successes, doing things like this, are going to be definitely key to kind of maturing and ensuring success.
You make reference to people that look like you, and so I'm wondering, in your undergraduate space, I would imagine at the HBCU you saw representation of yourself among faculty, among student body. Um, so what I'm hearing you say that you're making more reference to, getting away from the party types and people, finding those that are like-minded and grounded. So I'm hearing that then you're thinking, okay, then you have the thoughts of, okay, graduate school, right? Preparing for grad school, applying to grad school. What was your head at that point?
So I was applying, I want to say several years ago. Want to say I was applying during my junior year, and that was soon after I became very serious about medicine, right? So in my freshman year of undergrad, I was enjoying the college life. The sophomore years when I had my wake up call. In junior year, I've really gotten serious and made some progress, and I'm starting to apply to grad schools. Actually, I applied to medical schools,
Mm-hmm.
but me being me, I applied to medical schools, but knowing my track record, I was like, hey, I need a backup plan. So I applied to a bunch of like post-bac programs.
Hmm.
There's various ones out there. There's ones that are more academic based and just purely there to kind of improve your academic scores and prove that you can do graduate work. There's ones out there that are more research based, so like, hey, your grades are okay, but you need to add some extracurriculars and do some other things before you go into a graduate or a medical school program or anything like that. So I applied to a variety of different things. And so I applied to a research-based medical post-bac program. And because I knew what my background was in terms of I had failed a class, I didn't do as well as some of my peers and other people who had gone straight into medical school.
Hmm.
And so I applied to post-bac programs in order to kind of get more extracurriculars, get some research, and prove that I can do graduate work. And so that's what I felt at that time that medical schools and other people were looking for is, hey, sometimes the best indicator of success can be past performance. That's what some people look at. And so they say, hey, you didn't do so well in this field. What makes us think that we're going to invest in you to continue doing well? And so you get to figure out how to prove that. And so that's what I ended up doing was I applied to a post-bac program because some of my interviews, like in 2 different interviews for medical school, they brought it up. They said, hey, you have a D in biochemistry. You couldn't do it, like just, being very point blank.
Hmm.
You couldn't do it in undergrad. What makes us think you can do it in medical school?
Right.
And I was like, hey, I explained my situation and they said, okay, got it, but I didn't get accepted. And so I applied to a research-based program, did additional research, took graduate level courses at the same time that I was doing that,
Hmm.
and then reapplied so that when I reapplied, I was able to say, yes, I focused myself that I've done graduate level work already.
Hmm.
This is why you should invest in me. And so that was like that's what my mindset was when I was switching from undergraduate to graduate.
And you mentioned in your bio that you did the HIV research. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this was, it made leaps and bounds into research, but like I said, I did a post-bac program where essentially I worked as a research assistant up at Albany Medical College in a couple of different labs, one with attending the principal investigator scientists doing kind of research where they we're essentially trying to attach different viral particles to gold and then inject that into animals to see if it could basically stick and get the body to react to it. And then I did another one where I was working with a postdoc when they were doing their research on cellular wound healing, so healing injured cells at the microscopic level. And that the main thing I took away from those experiences was the thought processes of graduate level thinking, not just pure memorization, not just like A plus B equals C. It's why is there an A? Why are we looking at A in the first place? Why are we looking at B in the first place?
Right.
And how does it get to, and what does C really mean? Like going past the just rote memorization and we do this because of this. That's the higher level thinking that everybody wants to see,
Right.
is the why behind everything that we do.
Impressive. And so you get accepted to a doctorate level program, osteopathic medicine in Harlem with Touro College. And so I'm wondering, can you share like what that experience was like for you? If you can surmise, did you feel prepared? How were you assisted? How was that experience?
So I did feel prepared. Like I said before, going into the post-bac program really helped me out and it helped make that transition. In medical school is tough, right? And the first 2 years is straight book work, right? You're doing all book work. You're not really in the hospital at all. And you got to have a very strong support system, right? Because it's not the time you're going to be going out partying. It's not the time you're going to be hanging out on the weekends and weekdays with family and friends. Your classmates will become your new family because you need to form those study groups. You need to form those bonds to help each other out, because sometimes something may click with one person, but you didn't really understand it. And maybe you'll understand something because your past experiences or just the way you process things. And so depending on the school that you go to, you'll hear about cutthroat schools versus not cutthroat schools and things like that. In my experience, and I've only obviously ever went to one medical school, but from what I know, osteopathic schools in the school I went to wasn't cutthroat at all. We were very, very nurturing amongst each other, which kind of goes with the osteopathic philosophy, right? Treating the whole self, wellness, things like that. We really just had to come together as a class and really help each other out. And so medicine is hard. And one thing that I learned during my third year of medical school, so my clinical years, is like what you know will save somebody's life, but what you don't know may kill somebody. So that I had an attending say that to me, and like before I was just like, hey, learn, memorize, learn. It's a fire hose of knowledge, of just trying to gather as much as I could. And honestly, you have to pick and choose. Like, okay, you can't memorize everything. There's too much knowledge out there, right? And I would just be okay. Well, I feel like this is important. I feel like this is important. That's not important. We can move on from there, and keep going, like things like that. But one day I was on the ward as a third year med student, and I didn't know the answer to a question, and immature, we're maturing every day. I was like, it's not important. I got it. And the attending was like, well, not necessarily. What you know may save somebody, yes, but what you don't know will kill somebody. And that just like blew my mind on the impact of everybody thinks of what you know. The impact of that statement. What I don't know, what the things I skipped over because I didn't feel like it was important. Medical school, the environment, everybody is usually, I can't speak for all medical schools, right? But everybody's usually wanting the students to learn as much as possible so that we can do as much good as possible. And so I feel like the medical school I went to, all the professors, they were very invested in the students. They definitely went out of their way to help out and kind of instill that philosophy amongst the students.
So, I mean, these different levels of education, right? High school, undergrad, graduate school, the postdoc, and then doctorate level. Did you find that you had to change the way in which you study, the way in which you collaborate? I mean, what adjustments did you have to make to be successful in doctorate level?
Yeah, so in the very beginning, high school, early college, it's memorization. Like that, I didn't need anybody else. I didn't study with anybody else. I was like, hey, take my book, I go to my room, I start reading, and then I go, it's time for a test, I regurgitate. That's very early on in the learning path. As you start to progress, you need to go from memorization to understanding, right? Like to understanding why, to being able to teach it. So if you're able to teach it to someone else, because they're going to come with questions on their own, right? you're gonna teach them. They're like, well, why this? Well, how is this? And so once you're able to teach it to someone else, then you usually understand it pretty well. And so going from just rote memorization to kind of really understanding to synthesizing new information from that, that's going to be the key to graduate success.
Dr. Newsome, it'd be remiss of me not to have a conversation with you about representation in medicine. And I'm curious from your perspective, have you ever had that experience where you were the only in the room, or just challenges that you would want to share so that the young ones coming forward would know how to understand this space and how to negotiate this space? Just, is there anything that you would want to share?
Yeah. So like during various schoolings, I did experience like what I would term as racism. Just being told like, hey, you can't wear certain clothing when others were wearing the exact same thing.
Mhm.
Saying, hey, that's unprofessional, and you particularly are no longer allowed to wear this. While other people are literally walking by while we're having the conversation wearing the same thing, or just being held to different standards where like I got a certain score on a test or sorry, on a quiz, and I was told, hey, like if you get this score, you're out, that kind of thing. And it's very, very, very important to one, persevere, and understand that that's just one person. It's not necessarily indicative of the school or your potential. Um, and then secondly, just as important is to have a really good support system, and having other people that you can talk to and that understand you and that are ready to uplift you. And so,
And
I'm sorry.
where did you turn, when you were having experiences, um, for mentorship, for guidance? Like, where did you turn?
Yeah, so one support system is friends, other people in my class, but also with like other student organizations. Like for instance, I was super involved with SNMA, Student National Medical Association, from prior to medical school, and then while in medical school, I was super involved and went to their conferences, talked with their had a chapter I was involved with. Just seeing other people in similar situations, seeing other people that have progressed through those situations and are successful in their fields, in their personal life and in their careers, and just learning and sitting at their feet and talking with them and understanding that it's just one person that maybe feels that way, but that just because they feel that way doesn't mean that you're going to be hindered anyway. You might hit a roadblock, you either go over it, around it, under it, you figure out a way around to get through it. And so I think that was definitely something that helped me, was like my involvement with the SNMA, and then just talking with other people that kind of look like me, hearing their experiences and knowing that there is light on the other side, and you can get through it.
I remember speaking or interviewing with someone who had mentioned that in her when she experienced issues of racism, that she would go to the SNMA members and mentors that she got from there, and the advice and exchanges that they would have was, okay, so is this something that we can deal with now, or will you be more effective to deal with it later on? But she just felt so, and she would choose her battles, but she felt so empowered by listening, but by believing or learning that she was not the only one having such experiences, and she, got the information she needed to get through it, to know how to deal with it. So, that SNMA is extremely valuable, extremely valuable. So let's move on to, so now you're in the role, practicing physician. Um, were you, what's the word I'm looking for? Was it all that you thought it would be?
Um, yes,
Okay.
I absolutely love what I do.
Hmm.
If you're in it for the money, don't do it for money. Don't do there's way easier ways to make a lot of money where you work less hours. But if you're in it to help other people for some personal and fulfillment, to fulfillment of others, to take care of others, 100%. Like I would do it all again, right? I would do the things a tiny bit differently, maybe mature a little bit faster, focus a little bit earlier, just to make it. But honestly, the journey, I would definitely do again, and I would definitely take this job again.
Have you been frustrated at all with the systems? And I wonder if you could help educate me. So you're, is there a distinction between practicing, in a civilian hospital versus military? Because I'm wondering, I hear a lot of frustrations, well, I should say from some, dealing with the systems that we have in place in civilian hospitals. And I'm wondering, is there any difference that one would experience in the military?
So yes and no. Um, every every job, every system has its quirks. Every system has its ups and downs. Like I tell people when they're trying to decide what specialty to go into, like, oh, should I do this? Or, like every every field has its, like, for me, it's back pain. Everybody comes in with back pain, right? Every specialty has its own little thing that um, is going to bog you down. The civilian system versus military system. Um, I've never practiced in the civilian system. I have friends that have, but the military system has its own quirks also. Um, One thing that we in the civilian and the military system that we deal less with is the concern for insurance, about whether or not someone can pay for a particular procedure that we want to do, because everybody in our system has insurance. So that is one thing that we don't have to worry with as much. We still have to deal with the insurance,
Right.
but we don't have to worry about whether they have insurance or not.
Hmm.
That's one thing that's different. Um, but then there's also a concern for, in terms of like competing military requirements, right? Like I have to go to the range, right, and go shoot a weapon every once in a while. I have to do PT, physical fitness, physical training, and things like that, where a civilian counterpart doesn't have to worry about that kind of thing. So there's different aspects of just being in the military that is going to be different than in the civilian world.
So
But every system has its quirks.
could you give me a day in the life? What does a day look like for you?
Depends on the day and depends on the job. So that's the one, what it can be looked at as a good thing or a bad thing is that, in the military, since I move very frequently, in my particular field, family medicine, my jobs can change day to day and year to year. So for instance, when I was at my last job, a day in my life, when I was the medical director, was I get to work early, do some admin computer work. I see clinic all day, and then in interspersed, I'd go to some meetings, things like that. Here, where I'm a unit physician for the battalion, I do some physical training in the morning. I I see some clinic a little bit for a couple hours in the morning. I go to some staff meetings with the commander. And then I also might meet with our medics to do some medic training with them, and teach them about tactical combat, casualty care, triaging, care under fire, things like that. So it all depends on the unit you're with, and the field of specialty, right? So additionally, if I was a specialist, right, if I was an orthopedic surgeon, um, the day of my life might be more akin to a civilian, where I'm in the hospital, I'm doing surgery, I'm rounding on patients, I'm going home.
Mhm.
Except for the days that, the months that you get deployed, then you're you're overseas, taking care of wounded soldiers and things like that. The higher you go in rank, the more administrative, the more leadership they're going to expect out of you.
Okay. All righty. Well, listen, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. So we're going to end this. Again, Dr. Newsome, thank you so much. This ends this episode of Lessons Learned. and we will see you guys next week.